For years, people whispered about what lies beneath Skinwalker Ranch. Strange lights in the sky, creatures that vanish without a trace, sounds that seem not human. But now, something has changed. Authorities have finally stepped forward, not with rumors, but with findings, data, evidence, and one chilling truth. What's buried beneath the ranch may be far older and far more dangerous than anyone imagined. This is no longer just a story about myths. It's about what happens when curiosity goes too far and something answers back. Long before fences were built, before cameras were set up, and long before scientists arrived with machines and questions, the land now known as Skinwalker Ranch was already feared. To the native tribes who lived near it, this was not just land. It was a warning. Stories passed down through generations spoke of a place where the world did not behave the way it should. A place where the line between what is seen and what is hidden felt dangerously thin. They spoke of strange beings, shapeshifters, often called skinwalkers, that could move between forms, watching from a distance, never fully revealing themselves. People didn't settle there. They avoided it, because some believed the land was alive, and it was watching. Years later, when modern owners arrived, they brought none of that fear with them. To them, it was just property, open land, a quiet place, far from noise and crowds. But the quiet didn't last. It started small. Animals were found dead under strange conditions. No blood, no tracks, no signs of struggle, just silence and confusion. Then came the shadows. Figures seen at the edge of vision, but gone when looked at directly. Doors opening without reason. Sounds echoing across empty fields at night. Even the air began to feel different. Heavy, still, like something unseen was always there, just out of sight. And then, curiosity took over. Investigators began to arrive. Scientists, researchers, even teams quietly connected to government studies. They brought cameras, sensors, drones, tools meant to bring clarity to mystery. Their goal was simple: find the truth. But what they found wasn't simple at all. At first, it looked like random activity. Equipment glitches, strange readings, unusual energy spikes. Easy to dismiss, until patterns began to form. Signals repeating at specific times. Movements detected beneath the ground where nothing should be moving. It didn't feel natural. It didn't feel accidental. And the deeper they looked, the more one idea became impossible to ignore. Something beneath the ranch was reacting, not just existing, responding, watching back. What was once dismissed as folklore was starting to feel real, tangible, measurable, and far more unsettling than anyone expected. Because this wasn't just a mystery anymore. It was an interaction, a silent exchange between those above and something below. And then everything changed. The first full underground scan was completed. The data came in, and buried beneath layers of earth and stone was something no one had prepared for. A structure, not natural, not random, something placed or built. But the question that followed was far more chilling than the discovery itself. What exactly was buried beneath the ranch? After the first underground scan revealed something unnatural, the investigation at Skinwalker Ranch changed completely. This was no longer about strange stories or unexplained sightings. Now, there was something solid to focus on, something buried. As technology improved, the teams brought in more advanced tools. Ground-penetrating radar, high-frequency sensors, deep scanning systems designed to map what lay far below the surface. At first, the images looked unclear, blurry shapes, distorted lines. But as the scans became sharper, one thing stood out. The formations underground didn't look natural. They had edges, angles, structure. Nature rarely creates straight lines or perfect shapes deep underground. But this looked organized, deliberate. It didn't belong. Then came the energy readings. Sensors began picking up sudden spikes, bursts of energy that appeared without warning. They didn't follow any known pattern of natural activity. No earthquakes, no storms, no solar interference. Just sudden, sharp signals. And then nothing. Even more troubling, The equipment itself started to fail. Cameras shut down mid-recording. Batteries drained instantly. Drones flying over the area would suddenly lose control, spinning or dropping from the sky as if something had interrupted them. At first, the team tried to explain it. Maybe rare minerals underground were causing interference. Maybe there were hidden caves or magnetic fields affecting the devices. But those explanations didn't last long, because the deeper they scanned, the stranger things became. There were moments when signals appeared clearly, strong, measurable, undeniable. And then, in the next second, they vanished. Not faded, not weakened, gone, as if something had switched them off, or hidden them. That's when the feeling started. Several researchers, working alone or in small groups, reported the same thing. A quiet pressure, a strange awareness. They couldn't see anything. They couldn't hear anything unusual, but they felt it. The sense that they were not alone, that something beneath them knew they were there, watching, waiting. It wasn't panic. It was something slower, heavier, like being observed by something they couldn't understand. And then, without warning, everything shifted again. Authorities stepped in, not to shut the project down, not to dismiss it, but to take control of it. Access became restricted. Data was handled more carefully. The investigation moved into a new phase, quieter, more controlled, and far more serious. Because now, this wasn't just a mystery to explore. It was something to manage. As officials began reviewing the collected data, one detail stood out above everything else. Hidden within the signals was a pattern. Repeating. Structured. Intentional. It didn't look random. It looked like something was trying to organize or even communicate. And that raised a question no one in the room could answer. Who or what was behind it? By the time the data was fully analyzed, one thing became impossible to ignore. The signals beneath Skinwalker Ranch were not random. They were forming patterns. Clear. Repeating. Structured. At first, the team thought it might still be natural. Some kind of rare underground reaction. Something science just hadn't fully understood yet. But the longer they looked, the harder that explanation became to believe. These patterns had timing, spacing, consistency. They followed sequences that looked almost intentional. It wasn't just energy anymore. It was organized. Experts began comparing the signals to known communication systems. Radio waves, digital pulses, even coded transmissions used in advanced technology. Some of the sequences resembled simple repeating loops. Others were more complex, changing slightly each time, as if adjusting or refining themselves. But no matter how much they studied the data, one problem remained. Nothing could fully translate it. No known system matched what they were seeing. And that's when the divide began. Some researchers held on a logic. They believed it had to be natural, just something rare and not yet understood. But others weren't so sure. Because the most disturbing detail wasn't the patterns themselves. It was how they behaved. When the team increased their scanning, sending stronger signals into the ground, the patterns changed. They became faster, sharper, more active. But when the researchers stopped, when the area went quiet, the signals faded, not slowly, almost instantly, as if something had noticed the attention and then withdrawn. It didn't feel like coincidence. It felt like a response, like something below was aware of being studied and reacting to it. That realization changed everything. The atmosphere among the team shifted. Conversations became shorter, more careful. Some researchers stopped staying late. Others refused to work alone. And a few simply left. No explanation, no reports, just silence. Those who stayed couldn't ignore the feeling growing inside them. This was no longer just an investigation. It was an interaction, a quiet exchange between two sides, one above ground, searching for answers, and one below, responding in ways no one could fully understand. But despite the fear, the project didn't stop. It couldn't, because now, the question was bigger than curiosity. It was about understanding what they were dealing with, or at least trying to. So the team made a decision. They would go deeper. A more powerful scan was prepared, designed to reach further below the surface than ever before. The risk was clear, but so was the need for answers. When the scan was finally completed, the data came through slowly, line by line, shape by shape. And then it appeared. A massive hollow space, hidden deep beneath the ranch. Too large to ignore, too defined to be natural, and completely unknown. Because while they could see the space, they had no idea what was inside it, or if something inside it was already aware of them. The moment the underground chamber was confirmed, everything changed at Skinwalker Ranch. This was no longer just about strange signals or unexplained energy. Now, there was structure, something physical, something hidden, and something that didn't belong. The chamber was massive, far larger than anyone expected. Its shape appeared smooth, almost carved, with boundaries too defined to be natural. It didn't look like a cave. It didn't look like a collapse. It looked intentional, and that made it far more unsettling. Authorities quickly moved to the next step, controlled exploration. Careful, measured, quiet. They couldn't rush this. Every move had to be planned. But the moment they tried to go deeper, something pushed back. Drilling equipment, tested and reliable, suddenly stopped working. Not broken, just unresponsive. Machines that had worked perfectly before refused to function once positioned above the chamber. Signals sent underground became scrambled. Clear data turned into noise. Lines disappeared. Readings became impossible to track. Even simple tools failed. It didn't make sense. And yet, it kept happening. Again and again. As if something didn't want them to reach it. The feeling spread quickly among the team. It wasn't spoken openly, but it was understood. It felt like the ranch was protecting something. Or maybe something beneath the ranch was protecting itself. Then came the spikes in activity. Each time an attempt was made to access the chamber, the environment reacted. Energy levels surged without warning. The ground beneath their feet trembled, small vibrations at first, then stronger enough to make people step back. And above them, the sky changed. Lights appeared, bright, silent, moving in ways that didn't match any known aircraft. They hovered, shifted, then disappeared just as quickly as they came. The timing was too exact to ignore. Every attempt to reach the chamber triggered a response. That realization changed the question. It was no longer just, what is down there? Now it became, what happens if we reach it? Some experts began to hesitate. Not out of doubt, but out of concern. Because whatever was beneath them didn't seem inactive. It wasn't dormant. It wasn't waiting quietly to be discovered. It was responding, watching, and possibly defending itself. That idea was difficult to accept, but harder to ignore. Still, the investigation continued. Because once something like this is found, it can't be unseen. A final attempt was approved. More advanced equipment, more control conditions, more preparation than ever before. This time, they weren't just searching. They were expecting an answer. What they didn't expect was how that answer would come. Because when the sensors were finally lowered and the data began to stream in, no one in the room was ready for what they were about to see. The operation was planned with extreme care. Every step was controlled, every variable measured. At Skinwalker Ranch, this was the closest anyone had come to reaching the truth. Advanced sensors were prepared, stronger, more precise than anything used before. They were designed to go deeper, to hold connection longer, and to capture data in real time. This was it, the moment where questions might finally meet answers. As the equipment was lowered into the ground, the room remained silent. Screens flickered with incoming data. Lines formed. Signals held steady. For a brief moment, everything worked perfectly. Clear readings. Stable connection. No interference. It was the first time the team had seen the system operate without disruption at that depth. And then, the readings changed. At first, it was subtle. A drop in temperature. Sharp and sudden. Far below what the surrounding Earth should allow. Then came the energy waves. Not spikes. Not random bursts. But flowing patterns. Steady, controlled, almost rhythmic. The kind of movement that didn't feel natural. The kind that felt directed. The team watched closely. No one spoke, because something else had appeared. Movement, not shifting Earth, not collapsing rock, but something inside the chamber, changing position. It was brief, just a moment, but it was clear, measured, recorded. Something had moved, and it hadn't been random. The room changed instantly. What had once been tension turned into something heavier. Realization. This was no longer about theories. No longer about trying to explain strange readings or unknown signals. This suggested something else entirely. Presence. Something was down there. It was not still. Authorities reacted immediately. The decision was quick and final. Pull the equipment back. End the operation. Do not go further. The sensors were withdrawn. Systems were shut down. Data was secured. The mission was over. At least for now. But it was too late to undo what had already happened. Because everything had been recorded. Every signal. Every shift. Every second of that movement. Proof. Not of what it was, but of what it wasn't. It wasn't empty. It wasn't silent. And it wasn't inactive. As the footage was reviewed again and again, the same moment stood out. The shift, the motion, the undeniable sign that something had reacted within that hidden space. No one could explain it. No one could define it. But no one could ignore it either. And as the room sat in silence, one question slowly began to take hold. Not spoken loudly, but impossible to dismiss. Because it changed everything. Had they just observed something? Or had something down there been observing them first? After the moment of revelation, everything changed. Not just underground, but above it too. At Skinwalker Ranch, the flow of information didn't slow down gradually. It stopped. Updates that once came regularly became rare. Reports that used to be detailed turned short and controlled. Public statements shifted in tone, careful, measured, and often unclear. Simple questions were met with simple answers. Nothing unusual, nothing confirmed, nothing denied. To the outside world, it seemed like the investigation had lost momentum. But that wasn't the truth. Because behind the scenes, things were moving faster than ever. Security around the ranch increased. New restrictions were put in place. Access points were monitored more closely. Fewer people were allowed in, and even fewer were allowed to speak about what they saw. Longtime researchers who had spent years studying the site suddenly found themselves limited. Some were asked to step back. Others stayed, but under tighter control. The environment had changed. It wasn't open anymore. It was contained, and that silence began to feel intentional. Because when information disappears, it doesn't always mean there's nothing to say. Sometimes, it means there's too much. Too much to explain. Too much to risk. Too much to release. The lack of answers became its own kind of message. One that raised more questions than it resolved. And while the outside world grew quieter, the ranch itself did not. Activity didn't stop. It increased. Sensors still picked up unusual readings. Energy spikes became more frequent. Equipment continued to fail without clear reason. And some reports, those that never reached the public, suggested that the patterns beneath the ground were becoming more active, more responsive, as if whatever was below had not been disturbed by the investigation, but awakened by it. That idea was never confirmed, but it lingered, quietly, unspoken, because the deeper truth may not have been about what was found, but about what was triggered. And now, with official voices stepping back and clear answers fading into silence, the mystery only grew heavier, more focused, more urgent, because silence, when it follows discovery, is rarely accidental. It's usually protective. Protective of information, or something far more unsettling. Because if the truth were simple, it would have already been shared. And that leaves one final question hanging in the air. What exactly are they trying to keep hidden, and why now? Today, the story of Skinwalker Ranch feels different. For years, it was easy to dismiss. Stories of strange creatures, lights in the sky, shadows in the distance, things that sounded more like legend than reality. But now, there's something else. Evidence. Not just stories passed down through time, but recorded data, measured signals, captured moments that refuse to fit into simple explanations. Patterns beneath the earth, structures hidden deep below the surface, and movement that should not exist. This is no longer just about belief. It's about possibility. Because if the findings are real, and the data suggests they are, then something lies beneath the ranch. Something physical, something active, and maybe something aware. Theories have only grown since the discovery. Some believe it could be advanced technology, something built, hidden, or left behind long ago. Not from recent history, but from a time we don't fully understand. Others think it may be something natural, but so rare, so complex that modern science hasn't caught up to it yet. And then there are those who fear a different answer, that it's neither technology nor nature, but something else entirely, something that doesn't follow the rules we expect, something we don't yet have the language or the understanding to explain. And that may be the most unsettling part of all, because the deeper investigators looked, the less control they seemed to have. Equipment failed. Signals changed. Responses came from below, subtle, but impossible to ignore. It didn't feel like discovery. It felt like interaction. And now, with official voices growing quieter and clear answers becoming harder to find, the mystery has only deepened. Because what was revealed raised more questions than it answered. Not just about what is there, but about what it might mean. What lies beneath may not just be hidden. It may be waiting, watching, learning. And if that's true, then this is not the end of the story. It's only the beginning. Because one question still remains, unanswered and more important than ever. If something beneath Skinwalker Ranch is truly active, is it waiting to be discovered, or waiting for something else entirely?